What is up, everybody? So, I was reading this statistic the other day, and it said how over 2/3 of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. Now, I had over $1,000 in savings before I even started to invest, before I was 18 years old. So, this completely baffled me that people out in the workforce didn't have that much money. I started wondering how this was possible that people making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year could not have enough money to cover a blown out tire. Well, it's because so many people don't know how to budget and they don't know how to take hold of their financial situation that they often get into predicaments like that, where they rack up a ton of credit card debt because they instantly go to their credit card for their savings account, which is an absolutely terrible idea. So, lucky for you guys, I wrote out these 8 simple steps on how to take hold of your financial situation so that you could be more responsible with your money and you won't have to be worrying about these emergencies, such as, say, a blown out tire. And you won't have to be worrying about credit cards to solve all of your problems for that. Once you start implementing these into your own life, it'll dramatically help you out in the long run. Now, the first step in being able to get hold of your financial situation is starting pretty simple. You have to track your spending. Now, this is going to take you at least a month to truly get a hold of what all of your money is going to. But there's a few different programs out there that I'll leave in a link down below that can help you out on how to track your spending so you don't have to do all of this manually in a Google Doc like I did for the longest time. My personal favorite that I have been using for the longest time is Personal Capital. Personal Capital lets me see all of my different accounts and the values on them all in one place, so I don't have to be looking over, oh, what's in my credit union, what do I owe on my credit card, what's this bank account, that bank account, and the other thing. It condenses it all into one place where I can see everything. Another great resource is mint.com. Mint shows these awesome graphics of where all of your money is going as well. So you could see these pie charts of how you're spending 20% of your income on entertainment and another 30% on utilities. This really helps you get an idea already of to where your money's going and how it's going there. Though it's a little unfortunate to look at these numbers sometimes when you figure out that you spent $100 on Starbucks last month. Would never be me. But if you do see something like that, don't get discouraged. Because the first step in being able to stop that is to see it. There's an old saying out there is that anything that you measure grows. Now, step 2 in this is going to be organize your current spending. Now, like I said before, Mint does this for you. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit more details of how I would organize this. Now, the number one thing that you're going to see is the necessities that you're going to be spending every single month. This is things like your rent, mortgage, your car insurance, health insurance, and food. These are things that you can't live without. It's not something that you could really cut back on. Oh, you know what? I think I'm just gonna live out on the street for a month. No, that's completely unreasonable. This is something that's coming in every single month that you have to be paying, or else there will be really serious, dire consequences. The step below that is going to be food and groceries. Now, there's a little caveat to this. Now, food and groceries doesn't count you going out to Burger King and McDonald's with your friends for a lunch, because that's much more expensive than going over to Walmart and buying 2 pounds of meat and some hamburger buns. The thing about when you're buying groceries is that it can fluctuate slightly in how much you're going to be paying for those groceries. You could cut back and live on top ramen and corn dogs for the rest of your life. Would that be pleasurable? Not really, but it's possible. So food and groceries are one of the things that you need to look at how much you're spending on them and what exactly you're buying. The third thing that can fluctuate a little bit is those outstanding loans. Now, obviously you have the minimum payment on these loans every single month, however much that ranges to. But maybe you're trying to pay these loans down a little bit faster, so you're putting more than the minimum payment on. What I want to focus on is good loans, bad loans, and what kind of debt is good versus what kind of debt you want to get rid of. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. We'll see how much you're paying towards those loans right now, whether that just be the minimum payment or if you're trying to accelerate that a little bit. Next, you're going to be looking at your emergency expenses. These are things like a blown out tire, whether or not you were able to pay for that with money that you had in an emergency fund or in your savings account, or whether you had to use your credit card to cover that. These can range from anything from a doctor's visit to a car accident. So you really want to be focused on your emergency fund, which we'll be looking at in just a minute, with how much money you have in there and whether or not you're safely able to take that out. Lastly, we're going to be looking at your needless spending. This is stuff like your luxuries. Yes, it's great to be able to go out to the movies 6 times a month, but do you need to be doing this? No, if you had to, you could be cutting back on these things. You don't have to be going to Gordon Ramsay's 5-star restaurant dinner every single night. You could live by making some pasta at your house. So it's really important to see how much money you're really spending on these unnecessary items that are going out, whether that be new technology or going out with friends. It all goes into this category. You could rank for yourself what's most important to you. If you favor going out with friends on the very top, then yeah, you could devote some money to that. But then if you say you don't have to be going watching a movie with your significant other 4 times a month, then maybe that's a little bit lower of a priority. Now, the last part of this step is to look at how much money you made this month versus how much money you spent this month. This is a really important factor because it's also looking at how much you're putting into savings. Whether or not you're living to paycheck could dramatically impact your future. If you don't have enough money to be putting into savings each month or to be investing, then you're going to be working for the rest of your life. Now let's take a look at step number 3. This is building up an emergency fund. Again, we're going to be looking back at these necessities that we need to be paying every single month, things that we can't come back on. This is rent, insurance, phone payments, things like that. You want to have 3 to 6 months of an emergency fund built up in case some kind of emergency happens. This could be ranging from getting laid off of work to a doctor's visit. You don't know when you're going to need this emergency fund or what it's going to be for. That's why it's recommended that you have 3 to 6 months available, so that if you get laid off, you have bare minimum of 3 months to find work. But also, if you have an emergency doctor's visit, you'll be able to use that money to pay for the doctor's visit and still have some left over to be able to fund any other emergencies that you have. You don't want to be caught in a situation where you don't have any money left over to help yourself in case something really bad happens. That's how you get into a revolving door of credit card debt, which is so hard to get out of. So I urge you guys, bare minimum 3 to 6 months of an emergency fund. So let's take an example. Say you have to pay $900 a month for rent, $250 a month for insurance, another $250 a month for food, another $100 for miscellaneous. So that's $1,500 that you're spending bare minimum each month. Will this be able to make you live a very comfortable lifestyle at all? Not really, but this is the bare necessities. So what we're then going to do is multiply this $1,500 by 6. That gives you $9,000 that you should have in that emergency fund. This should more than cover any expenses that you have that come in the here and now. I'd recommend getting this before you start any investments because you don't want to be having to take money out of your investments when they're down below. Say you had an emergency right now when the stock market is down over 30%, that would absolutely suck to cash out your investments at a loss right now. So keep it in a high interest savings account and don't touch that money unless you have to. Now we're going to be looking at step number 5, which is actually creating your budget. What you're going to do now is adjust the spending that you saw in the previous 1 to 2 months that you've been tracking and actually put it in to see how much you want to be spending instead. And you're going to be sticking to this budget. Now, the first step in creating your budget is, again, looking at those necessities and putting those in first. These are these reoccurring costs every single month that aren't going to be changing. After that, you could be putting in things that are going to fluctuate slightly, like utilities and food, but they shouldn't be changing that much either. This is the core of your budget, so you shouldn't have to be worrying about changing this anytime soon. After that, you could be looking at your debt, investments, and savings. those are the three things that could be fluctuating depending on what you're wanting to prioritize right now, which I'll get into a little bit later. The very last thing that you should be putting in your budget is entertainment, because you're not wanting to prioritize going out to the movies over eating food next week. Now, what we're going to be doing is increasing our savings and moving on to step number 6, which is paying down our debt. Now, there's two different types of debt. So when I say that you're paying down your debt, I want you to understand that there's good debt and bad debt. So what's the difference between good debt and bad debt? Bad debt is things like a brand new car, credit card payments, high interest loans, and student loans. Now, good debt, on the other hand, is going to be things like a house loan, a business loan, student loans, and low interest loans. Now, you'll notice that I said student loans twice in there, and I did that very purposefully. I personally love the liberal arts. I've been acting and singing for as long as I can remember. Performing is one of those passions of mine that I don't see going away anytime soon. But to go to college for the liberal arts, it doesn't look like a good idea in my book, because I'm going to be paying $100,000 for nothing guaranteed. That's when I would consider that type of student loans bad debt. Well, for example, if you're going into med school and you're trying to become a doctor, that's something that you have to go to college for. If I really wanted to, I could go out and try to go to New York and become an actor. I don't have to go to Juilliard in order to become an actor. But to become a neurosurgeon, you have to do a little bit of schooling for that. That's when student loans would be considered good debt, because it's going to be giving you a real return on your investment of your education in a way that you can't do anywhere else. I can't get a certificate for neuroscience by going online. Now, let's focus on getting rid of this bad debt now. There are two different schools of thought to how to pay down your debt. There's the snowball method and the avalanche method. On the surface, they both sound really similar in terms of ideology, but if you get into the details, they're very different. Okay, let's take Jim, for example. Jim has $50,000 of a student loan at 5%, another $12,000 credit card loan at 18%, $20,000 car loan at 4.2%, another $10,000 credit card loan at 12%. Now, the snowball method would tell you to pay down these loans starting with the smallest balance first and paying the minimum payment on all of your other loans. So that means Jim would be paying the minimum payment on his student loan, one of his credit card loans, and the car loan. So he would be putting the rest of his money on that other $10,000 car loan, trying to bring that down to zero as fast as possible. Now, one of the benefits to this method of paying down your debt is a real psychological factor. Though it might not be mathematically the best way to pay off your debt, when your mind sees that you have one less outstanding loan, that encourages you to move forward even further and pay off the rest. One method, on the other hand, is the avalanche method. Now, what this method says is that you should pay off the loan with the highest interest rate first. So that means that Jim would be starting with his credit card loan first and be paying the minimum payments on all of the others until that credit card loan is gone. Now, obviously, that credit card loan is at 18%, so if we just let that sitting accruing interest over and over again, then it's going to be staying pretty much the same, and the principal that we pay down isn't going to be that much. This is one of the upsides of the avalanche method, is mathematically you're getting the most bang for your buck of where your money goes. If you pay down the highest interest loan first, then you don't have to worry about that accruing even more debt. You then move to the next highest interest loan and the next until you have no debt left, and that's going to be saving you the most money. Now, I'm not going to be telling you which method to use. Personally, I do prefer the avalanche method because I can just look at the numbers and try to put my emotions outside of it. If you are more emotional when it comes to your money, then I would definitely encourage you to use the snowball method, because that psychological factor can have a huge impact on some people of whether or not they're going to be continuing these payments on their loan, or if they're just going to be giving up halfway through. Step 7 is to increase your savings and investing. So you could look at all that money that you were just paying down all of your debt with. Now that's extra income that you have. If you had an 18% loan, that's a guaranteed 18% return on your investment. You're not going to be seeing that anywhere else unless you're trying to be trading penny stocks, which is very risky. Now, there's multiple different ways of how you could be going about your investments, whether that be bonds, stocks, REITs, real estate itself is what I plan on personally doing. The point is that you have to be investing. I'll leave my link to my Webull code down below, and if you deposit any amount of money, then you get a free stock. And if you deposit over $100, then you have the chance to win over $1,400 in a raffle off of their free stocks. No matter what, if you put in over $100, then you get 2 free stocks on their platform if you use my link down below. The point is that you need to start investing in your future. Because if you don't start investing, then there's no point in time that you're going to be able to retire. Which is the point that I'll bring up: 2 tax-advantaged retirement accounts, your Roth IRA and 401k. Both of them have their pros and cons, but now we're going to be getting to the 8th and final step of getting a hold of your financial situation. Now, hopefully you've been following these steps so far, and you're able to continue this for several months. Now, what you need to be doing is to slightly readjust that original budget that you set. Once you're living to this budget for a while, you might realize that you were off in a couple of things. Maybe you don't actually spend as much money as you thought that you would on food, or you don't need that extra $50 in entertainment. You could be diverting that money somewhere else, such as your retirement accounts or investing it. You could have also gotten a raise at this time or found a new job. So now the amount of money that you're bringing in each month is going to be far greater. There's a caveat to that. There's this hedonic treadmill that we get on that's lifestyle inflation. So lifestyle inflation occurs when you start to make a little bit more money and you start to spend a little bit more. The problem with this is that it can take you from making $40,000 a year, slowly increasing that over time to $80,000 a year, and it feels like you haven't made any changes to where you were before. You're still living paycheck to paycheck, and you're not in as nearly as good a financial situation as you should be, saying that you've made double the amount of money that you were making before. If you do get this raise and start making a little bit more money, put it towards your investments first. Pay yourself first. What I plan on doing is living off of the income that my investments make me, and whatever my primary career does, that goes towards my bare necessities, and the rest of it is going towards investments. Then I'll have my real estate properties, and I'll live off of whatever those make me. So if you do get that raise, make sure you're not pushing yourself to a point that you're being financially irresponsible with your money. Well, that's all for this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new on here. I started this YouTube channel about a week ago, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. So go ahead and leave a comment down below, and any new comment that you'd like to see here. Remember to check the description for all those links that I talked about, and to get your 2 free stocks with Webull. It's free money, so why wouldn't you take it? Until next time.